These are the immortalists who have moved into political office, who have set up offices inside the White House and various other places around the world, who are whispering to try and transform regulation so that they can bring all kinds of different potential solutions. And I say solutions with real attention to forethought, solutions for the human condition. And they themselves believe that they are today's alchemists and that AI is their philosopher's stone.
Now, if you could, would you choose to live forever? The dream to stop aging was once a wild west of experimentation, but now with investment from tech giants and a cult-like following on social media, staying young has wormed itself into reality. In her new book, The Immortalists, The Death of Death and the Race for Eternal Life, the author and social psychologist Dr Aleks Krotoski explores why biohacking is on the rise and asks if becoming immortal is really something we should want. And I'm delighted to say that Aleks joins me now. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
This book opens with your trip to the Fountain of Youth in Florida, where you come to the realization that no water will do anything for your creaky back. Now you've hit 50. As somebody who's not that far off 50, I can very much appreciate where you're coming from here. How much did your own aging process inspire your research into this?
I have to say, I have only really felt it over the last couple of years. And so when I was originally looking at this, I thought of it, and this is in 2017, I thought of it as quite an interesting yarn. I had originally heard about it and become interested in it, as many people did, around this idea of young blood transfusions. And I couldn't believe that this was something that was actually happening, not only just happening full stop, but also happening specifically in Silicon Valley. That felt to me like grotesque hubris. Yep. And as a tech reporter, I kind of gravitated towards that. But I do have to say that over the last many years of writing this book, I have actually started to feel it. I also lost my dad not long before I started to investigate this as well. And I think all of that did contribute. However, in writing it, I never really changed my opinion about whether I want to live forever.
So it's not a self-help guide, I get that. Yeah.
Lord, no, absolutely not.
What is an immortalist or a tech fundamentalist? How does it differ from somebody just trying to live healthily or, sort of take advantage of all the best things available?
Well, I think that there are three different definitions. First, we have the definition of people who think that AI and technology is going to be that silver bullet, that all we need to do is create the technology that will help us to ascend to an immortal life. And interestingly enough, people who believe in that also believe that we're going to upload our consciousnesses and end up on a server farm on Jupiter. And then we've got the other immortalist camp, which is, as you suggested, the biohackers who are using technology and medical science to try and extend their lives long enough that medical science can cure whatever would have otherwise killed them. And with this, they're relying upon algorithms, they're relying upon data to, as I say, to extend their lives just enough that they can live a little bit longer so that medical science can cure the common cold or whatever it is that's going to take them away. And then finally, we have those who are particularly interested in their legacies. And these are the immortalists who have moved into political office, who have set up offices inside the White House and various other places around the world, who are whispering to try and transform regulation so that they can bring all kinds of different potential solutions. And I say solutions with real attention to forethought, solutions for the human condition. And they themselves believe that they are today's alchemists and that AI is their philosopher's stone.
And in as much as we can tell, looking at the science, the medical sciences, how much does any of this stuff work? How much of this is sort of aspiration by billionaires with too much money and frankly too much time, even if they don't feel they've got enough? And how much of it is actually, you can do these things if you've got enough money that'll give you another 10 years? Well,
that is that's the $3 billion question. And Brian Johnson, who I feature in this book, who I spoke with for the radio series that I did for the BBC several years ago, upon which this is based, that's kind of what he's banking on. There is enough out there that there are interesting potential leads, right? I mentioned young blood. What we do know, based upon research, is that there is something in plasma perhaps of younger people, or certainly plasma that has not been aged like
Yep.
my 50-year-old.
Like ours. I get you. Yeah.
Our ripe
Yeah.
vintage, right?
Yeah.
There is something that we don't yet know. We don't know what it is that appears to have some kind of positive impact on certain muscles or certain aspects of the human body. We don't know what it is. There have been no research studies upon people who do not have extremely advanced age. Those are ongoing, or mice and lab rats, right? Like, I want to confirm you should not bleed your younger siblings or
Right.
so go
Yep.
grab somebody off the street. There's some evidence that this is that there is something to do with, I hasten to use the word rejuvenation. It is such a fringe science. However, other aspects of medical technology are indeed, they are, continuing writ large, and they are helping to solve a lot of our physiological issues. The question of whether they should, that's another part of the book.
So when you talk about the moral catastrophe that we've reached,
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Is that just because this is vampiric, or is it because if we think about living forever, we are sort of, it's just morally wrong to want to live forever?
It's a great question. And moral catastrophe is something that one of my contributors said. And his perspective and where he comes from in the book is a really interesting place. The notion that we should do this, right, seems to be the end game for a lot of these entrepreneurs. And that, to me, I think is where the problems lie, because none, and I honestly can say none of these entrepreneurs are imagining what will happen after. Right. And that, to me, is the catastrophe, because even if we come up with a silver bullet, or we happen to extend our lives a little bit more through learning about the human body with AI, there's nothing socially or politically in place that can cope with not just a largesse of people, but also the people who, between now and when we get some kind of silver bullet or some kind of solution to their diseases of aging, those folks who are ailing. Right? We know that in Japan, for example, the number of people with dementia has exploded as the aging of the population has increased. And we also know that there is the largest proportion ever of their annual budget is now going to social support. This is not what these entrepreneurs are thinking about. And I think that is the crux. Also, because they believe so fundamentally that technology is the thing that will give us, whether it's eternal life or radically extended life, with a caveat that we could decide when we don't want to go any further. The fact that they are propelling us in that direction without thinking about what those alternatives might be. And we see this again and again with talk about regulation of AI. We're not talking about, for example, the climate catastrophe that could come out of those technologies. It's that which I believe is the quote unquote moral catastrophe that my contributor just described and really leaned into.
Tell me about network states, basically sort of sovereign territories created for unregulated medical research. Well, how do they come about? Where are they? What are they?
Yeah, network states are really interesting. It's almost like it's also almost like an addendum to this book. I have to say that while network states and this concept of a territory that exists because a group of people found one another on the internet and decided that they wanted to buy a parcel of land that they would then occupy and have autonomous control over, their territory, as well as influence the local governments around which their territory has been purchased. This has been around for a little while. We've heard a different kind of terminology, charter states. We've heard that for a while from economists. But this one specifically is about people connecting on the internet. I've covered types of network states in the past, but with cryptocurrency, where people have believed that using cryptocurrency is going to create an entirely separate financial system. Well, now we have the same thing, but with health regulation. And we've heard whispers about this from the Trump administration when they're talking about, freedom cities, where the people within these cities can be autonomous, or, buying Greenland and then setting up a network state of people from around the world who believe that there should be no regulation when it comes to the types of health. Interestingly, I actually had to add a couple of extra chapters when the Trump administration came in, because some of the main proponents of this type of idea, of this separate sovereign entity, has come from a lot of the advisors. So Peter Thiel has been a very large proponent of what he originally called seasteading, creating physical
He was
islands.
going to put them on oil rigs and stuff,
That's
wasn't
right.
he? Yeah.
That's right. A little bit like Radio Caroline, right?
Oh, I see.
This is what I often think about.
What a
when
nice way of thinking about it.
I
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
what it's sort of what I think about. But and also like another entity called Sealand, which some wonderfully mad person decided to set up in the middle of the ocean and described it as a sovereign state, and it had its own currency and its own national anthem and all that sort of thing. And so when Thiel and other folks who are interested in this space are sitting next to or sitting within one of the most powerful offices in the world and is whispering about things like network states, and also given that his background has very much been interested in life extension and has funded to the tune of billions of dollars a lot of life extension and AI research, I think that we need to recognize that, folks like his midlife crises are really transforming global politics.
Finally, Alex, how much is this about extending life as we know it? And how much of the sort of immortalist dream is about humans kind of becoming something else that lasts, uploading our consciousness into an app, or, living in virtual worlds, or that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. And I have to say, caveat, when a lot of people were talking about this in the early 90s, this whole notion of uploading yourself to an app or a server farm on Jupiter, I dismissed it as loony.
It's very Ross from Friends, isn't it?
It is. It totally is. But at that time, and I totally dismissed it because I was like, oh, you guys are ridiculous. You just have drunk way too much internet Kool-Aid. Well, I have to say that was not a good choice on my part, because these folks have bubbled and they have, internally conversed, and they've created an entire belief system around this idea. And I think increasingly there are people out there who believe that the way that we are going to become eternal is to merge with technology, specifically artificial intelligence. And they are an extraordinarily, extremely influential group in Silicon Valley.
Look, I'm afraid we've got to leave it there. If only life were longer. Thank you very much indeed. That is Dr. Aleks Krotoski, and the book is The Immortalists, The Death of Death and the Race for Eternal Life, and it will be available to buy this Thursday. Thank you, Alex.